Welcome to the Collected Stories and Lies audiobook by Aaron Zevy. This story is titled Labradoodle.
See, I wouldn't be picking up dog shit with a small plastic bag if I could just have remembered if it were garbage day or recycling day. Now, that's not true. What I'm not so good at is remembering whether it's garbage or recycling. I don't know why, I just can't do it. I can recite all 50 states. I can, if you give me a minute, even remember all 50 state capitals. But damn if I can remember if it's garbage or recycling. The problem is my neighbor on my left doesn't put out the bin until early morning, which doesn't work for me. And the neighbor on my right, a lovely old Scottish man, has been wrong twice, which meant 4 weeks until my overflowing garbage bin gets picked up. That wasn't a pretty scene. So usually what I do is end up crossing the street. The family who lives there puts out the garbage bins early in the evening and never gets it wrong. They too are a lovely family with 2 small kids who have been my cross-the-street neighbors for nearly 5 years. Every time I saw the husband, he would greet me with an enthusiastic, "Hey, Ron," like he was trying to stick it to me. He asked me how things were going and did not wait for my reply when he announced that they were going to get a dog. And I said, "Oh, yeah?" And he said, "Yeah." The wife wasn't totally on board, but the kids had been really on their case, and what with all what was going on with distance learning and everything, he thought they deserved it, even though the wife wasn't totally on board. And I said, "Oh, yeah?" Then he said they were thinking of getting a Labradoodle. Did I know what that was? I did, but he proceeded to tell me anyway. He finished explaining the hybrid process and the breeder in Milton they were getting it from, and then waited for me to say something. So I said, I was thinking of getting a dog, although I wasn't. "That's great," he said. "Have you decided on what kind? Have you lined up a breeder?" And I said, "I'm not really a breeder type of guy," although I was. "I think I will probably get a rescue. You know what they say, adopt, don't shop." I don't know who said that. I have no idea where I'd heard it. But for some reason it shut him up, and I managed to cross the street back to my house and drag my recycling bin to the curb. And that should have ended things. It kept me far away from dog shit and small plastic bags, and it would have if Mrs. Katsakis had not died. Now, Mrs. Katsakis was a Greek lady who lived 3 doors down. She tended to her garden most days. In 10 years, I've never spoken to her. I may have waved at her thrice. She lived 3 doors down. In my world, it was as if she lived in Myanmar. I didn't even know her name. She was just a Greek lady who lived 3 doors down. And I would not have known her name if my neighbor from across the street had not knocked on my door and said, "Hey, Ron, Mrs. Katsakis has died." I didn't know who Mrs. Katsakis was, but I didn't really know any other Greek ladies, and there was no other Greek lady that the neighbor across the street and I had in common. So I was able to piece it together. I figured maybe he was collecting some money because I never saw anyone visiting her, and she lived in this small bungalow. And even though I didn't know her from Adam, I was happy to do my part, and especially if it helped get rid of my neighbor from across the street. So I said, "Hold on, let me go get my checkbook." Even though he hadn't said anything about money, he had really only told me that Mrs. Katsakis had died. I retreated into my house when he said she had a dog. And I said, oh yeah? And he said, "Yeah, and I remember you saying you were thinking of getting a dog." And I said, "Oh yeah?" And he said, "Yeah, you said you wanted to adopt. Her children live in Vancouver. There's no one to take the dog, so I thought of you. I mean, it feels like serendipity." Serendipity? It felt like he was trying to stick it to me. I asked him what kind of dog. "A Scottish Terrier. Her name is Olympus." Olympus. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. So now I'm walking my new dog down the street, Olympus, stopping from time to time to pick up the shit with a small plastic bag. I'm scooping up the shit when I suddenly remember my neighbor's name, Ethan. I should have remembered that. And it's Wednesday night, and Ethan has his garbage bins out. So I drop the bag of shit into his bin. Then I cross the street and go home with my dog.
Labradoodle was originally published by Tumbleweed Press in The Bubba and Other Stories. It was narrated by the author. Music by The Nearly Missed and The Bachelors of Music.